Shri Gurudev ki jai. Shriman Mahaprabhu ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Shri Thakur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Navadip Bhavatanam ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Praman. Pranam to all of you. Good afternoon, good evening. Thanks so much for coming. And as Madam Gopal Prabhu announced, we are continuing with a series of lectures we have begun last weekend, speaking on Bhaktivinoda Thakur's prayers to Sri Narasingha Dev in the context of the Raga-marga, or the path of passionate love that follows in the wake of the inhabitants of Vrindavan. So it's a very, very nuanced and interesting approach, since sometimes Narasingha Dev may be not necessarily conceived in connection to that type of prospect, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur has really brought to light how, as Raga Bhaktas, or perspective you say, Raga Bhaktas, we can also embrace this particular phase of divinity called Sri Narasingha Dev, Sri Narahari. So we have already studied 3 of the 5 of these prayers. So today and tomorrow we will be concluding our series of concluding, quote unquote. Never possible to do that, but somehow or other, formally concluding. So a brief recap from our last meeting, which was last Sunday. We studied the 3rd prayer of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where he was praying to Narasingha Dev in the context of Prahlad Maharaj and all that Prahlad represents, or at least something that Prahlad represents in the context of Abhay, which means non-bhai, non-fear, fearless, basically. So Thakur Bhaktivinoda was praying, please make me fearless, which is a whole big topic in itself, fear. Especially in connection with the Raga-marga, which is ideally nothing about fear, but at the same time, being honest and sincere in our sadhaka project, at some point we maybe have to acknowledge that there is some fear still in our floating in our DNA, if you will. We have to know what to do with that in the context of how to become players in the Raga-marga. So he was praying for make me fearless, make me abhay. And generally, as we speak, we generally are quite fearful concerning those things that are unknown to us. We are fearful about the unknown. The very fact that we don't know something makes us a little bit like uncomfortable, a little bit more than. So, and generally those things that we are not fearful of are those things that we know, quote unquote, or what we may call our comfort zone. That paradoxically should be the place that we should be the most fearful to enter in or to remain in, I would say, because if it's comfort zone, it means we are quite comfortable there and we are not willing to give up. So the sadhus will very mercifully, lovingly, as my Guru Maharaj will say, try to take out of the comfort zone, make us healthily uncomfortable. There is a healthy lack of comfort, but actually they are trying to take us to real, the ultimate comfort. In the words of Siddhar Maharaj, home comfort. But again, we have to know how to deal with this fear that we may have to leave the comfort zone and to face the unknown. We could speak about the unknown in 2 directions, interestingly, and just some brief recap in connection to our previous lecture. In one sense, we may say we are not aware of what Jung may call our shadow, the shadowlands, if you will. We spoke of the first lecture about also the chitta, or which was the word, the shed, the shed of our subconscious. We are throwing all the things that do not fit in our comfort zone to the shed, and someday the shed will have a life of its own. So we will hear voices and arms going out the shed, and we will have to enter someday and make something with all that. So one direction we may speak about the unknown in this connection. But also, not only our shadow is the fearful unknown, but also interestingly, our brightest potential, generally we are not aware of that. And therefore we may be afraid of that also because it's unknown. Only because if it's unknown, we are maybe fearful of that. So it's interesting because the saintly person, the sadhus come to our life trying to point at our brightest horizon and potential, but since it's still unknown, we may be fearful of our brightest potential. It's paradoxical, but that's what it means to be a human being, basically, dealing with these paradoxes and contradictions. And interestingly, so we do not know too much about our shadow. We may not be too much aware of our brightest potential. So we may be fearful of these two things because they are unknown. But ideally, in order to reach our brightest potential, we also have to acknowledge our shadow and learn to integrate the two. Actually, it's not so much about attacking one and here is the enemy, but as we spoke the other day, integration of complexity. That's the spirit of anartha nibriti, ideally. When we say anartha nibriti means dealing with the unwanted, but unwanted may not be the best word. I will say integrating these two unknowns. Our shadow in connection with all that we can be, if you will. So the integration of these two unknown poles, if you will, and the synthesis of them is what we will call transcendence, real integration. So that's the way we try to address anartha nibriti in the context of praying to Narasingha. Here we see Bhaktivinoda Thakur is praying over and over again to Narasingha, make me fearless, make me fearless. Even sound even as redundant. Like the editor-in-chief of the book may say, you are saying too much here, the word abhaya, abhaya. But there's a point for that. We need to really be free from all fear, again, in the direction of the shadow, in the direction of the sun, if you will, of the brightest potential and the unconscious shed, interestingly. So to be a sadhaka with integrity means to take those two and integrate in such a noble way that we become that ultimately. Some brief words about the last meeting for those who were not there, and why not, especially for those who were there. So today we will continue with with the fourth verse of these 5 of the Navadvip Bhavataranga. So I'll read it first in Bengali and then we will share the translation and try to unpack its meaning. It says like this. Swachande Vaishnahe Vatsa Sri Gauranga Dhame Jugalabha Jana Hao Rati Hao Name Mama Bhakta Kripa Bale Biknya Jabe Dura Sudha Chitti Bhajo Radha Krishna Rasa Pura. So Sri Thakur Bhaktivinoda says, this is verse 39 of Navadvip Bhavataranga, just in case. He says, he, referring to Narasingha, he will say, dear child, sit down freely and live happily here in Sri Gauranga Dham. May you serve the divine couple and have attachment to their names. By the grace of my devotees, all obstacles will leave you. With a pure heart, serve Radha and Krishna, who are a reservoir of nectar. Thakur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. So, so there is some progression, of course, in the verses. So after becoming fearless, we will receive this blessing. Sit down freely, happily, no more fear. In Sri Gauranga Dham, no enemies, really. May you have his blessing. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is having this type of vision. Yes, Srimade put in his hand on Bhaktivinoda Thakur's head, like when he offered to Prahlad blessings. Ask me whatever you want. I want to give you whatever you like myself. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is visualizing himself in that spirit, following the footsteps of Prahlad in this particular way. how Nrsimhadev is blessing in the context of Raga Bhakti again. No? It's not saying, may you just be free from fear, maybe free from samsara, that's all. Or may you have attachment for the whole names of Sri Radha and Krishna. May you live in Sri Dham. May you engage in Jugal Bhajan, the worship of the divine pair, and so on. In that particular focal point. And of course, today we will also share some nuanced version of that in the context of Navadvip. We already spoke about that a little bit. So then he's saying it's quite Vatsalya-like, this verse. Nrsimhadev enters into this father-like mode and blessing the child. So he said, hey, he means like, oh, alas. Vatsa, the word vatsa says it all. Means like calf, also means like child. Like a calf, how the mother cow tends to the calf. Similarly, Nrsimhadev tending to his devotee. Oh, child, basically. He's saying to all of you, if you are a good child, good children, Nrsimhadev will put the hand and say, all child. So Vaisya means reside or live. Sri Gauranga Dhame. And Swachanda means live freely in Sri Gauranga Dham. Which will be kind of redundant, but he makes the point for us to know, because I mean, to really live in Sri Gauranga Dham means to live freely. As much as you are physically there, but you are not free from those things you should be free. Where you are is the question. Where is the Dham, actually? Vrindavan, Mana Mora Vrindavan. Vrindavan is a state of consciousness, ultimately. Jugala Bhajan, how? So how means may you, so this is in the spirit of blessing, may you, Jugal Bhajan, may you have Jugal Bhajan. Perfect service to the Jugal, to the couples, Sri Radha and Krishna. But again, in the context of Navadvip. So we already said something last class, who are Radha and Krishna in Navadvip, but we'll continue elaborating today. And Harao Rati Ho Man Name. So may you have Rati or love, attachment for their Nam, for their names. Mama Bhakta Kripa Bale. Then he makes a very nice point. Mama Bhakta Kripa Bale. By the strength or by the grace. Bale means strength, but also grace. That's real strength. Mama Bhakta, of my devotees of the mercy. Mama Bhakta Kripa Bale. There's nothing more powerful than the grace of the sadhus. That's the most powerful thing. We should have that very clear for us. There's no most powerful Shakti, that Kripa Shakti. It's the grace of the sadhus. So Bhiknya Yave. By the grace of my devotees, Bhiknya Yave. All Bhiknyas, all obstacles will be cast away, one after the other. Dura means far away. Not only like put on the side, but you won't ever see them again. Like when the plane is leaving and you see all the houses is flying a little bit high, you see still the houses, but like this, and when it's above the clouds, normal houses, no more city, you are in another different constellation, if you will. So at one point, all the things that nowadays still are like monstrous became smaller, insignificant, non-existent in our particular reality. And the last line says, Sudha Chitte Bhajo Radha Krishna Rasapure. So Sudha Chitte, with a pure heart, that represents you are in that situation. Radha Krishna Rasapure Bhaja. So Bhaja, serve. Bhaja sometimes translated as worship, but we should understand it's an affectionate worship in the context of Raga-marga. Serve, seva, pleasing the object of your affection. Radha Krishna, and who they are? Who are they? Rasapure. They are like a reservoir, you say in English? Reservoir. What's the accent in the word? Reservoir. Okay, thank you. Reservoir of nectar. So this prayer concludes like Bhaktivinoda Thakura is thrown into this reservoir of nectar. That's the blessing of Nrsimhadev, throwing you into that unending ocean. So he tries to make this clear over and over again. So generally in Braj, interestingly, here Nrsimhadev is giving this blessing, fulfilling of desires. In Braj, sometimes there's this tradition that Govardhan plays this particular role. But people who goes and with the hope of fulfilling any desire, they pray to Giriraj. So there is some parallel version of this in Navadvip with Nrsimhadev. especially Nrsimhadev recites in Godrum. We'll continue speaking about tomorrow, but the context in which these 5 verses are being spoken by Bhaktivinoda Thakur is I won't say he's walking, but he described himself as rolling on the ground and arriving to the different pilgrimage sites. So it's a pretty dynamic parikram. It's not just, okay, wait, I have to take my shoes for the parikram. No, we will be rolling on the ground. So it's not that's how we will reach every single place. You know? That's the best way of Dandavat parikram. It's not even Dandavat. You're just like rolling, carried by the waves of your bhav here and there. So in this way, he arrives at Nrsimhapali, and that's when he's inspired to recite these prayers. Nrsimhapali is in Godrum. We'll speak about that a little bit more tomorrow, but Godrum is the island that embodies the principle of kirtan. Very important place. So Nrsimhadev, there is also approach for in this connection of please fulfill my desires. And again, fulfill my desires have to do with may I fulfill your desires. That's my desire in the context of the Raga-marga. I don't only want to engage in those things that you like, but I want to really drench those activities with the spirit of pleasing you. That's the implication of the term seva. We translate seva as service, but sometimes we retranslate service as doing stuff, basically. Hyper engagement or whatever, multitasking. And seva means deeply having like a passionate will to please the object of my affection. That's the real implication of these 4 letters, seva. So here Bhaktivinoda Thakur is doing that. He's approaching Nrsimhadev, Navadvip, and praying for his ultimate wish, if you will. So it's interesting how this verse combines these 2 ideas of being happy, residing peacefully in Navadvip, free from all fear, and the positive, if you will, getting free from in order to embrace the positive side of, Silasena Maharaj will say, positive and progressive immortality. And we don't only want immortality per se, because we can have like passive immortality. We are in immortality, nothing is going on, we are there, peaceful, shanti, shanti. But we want positive and progressive immortality, something to do in a loving way. So, but to begin with, yes, he's saying, may I reside happily in Navadvip. So happily, of course, is connected to this idea that we were elaborating in the previous verses. May I reside peacefully to begin with. Because we cannot, Krishna says in the Gita, you cannot speak about happiness if you don't have peace first. That's the problem in this world. People want to be happy, but they are not in peace. They do not know the art of being in peace, but they want happiness. So they misunderstand the whole thing, and in their attempt of being happy, they just get more and more agitated, basically. So real happiness has to have peace as its very foundation. As we spoke the other day, Santa Rasa. Santa means Shanti, peace. The whole building of Bhakti, of Raga Bhakti, has to have that foundation of Santa. Chaitanya Charitamrita said, Mahaprabhu came to give Charibhav, that's Sakya Vatsalya Madhurya. He's not mentioning Santa. But I will say, Santa is there invisibly as the foundation of the whole temple, if you will, of Dasi, Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya. So that, like the foundation, you don't see the foundation of the house. It's there, you cannot see it. But you need that to be there, because if not, the program is over right now. So it's so important, but it's not visible, but it's sustaining the whole thing. So all that Santa represents, fearlessness, selflessness, universal compassion, all these condensed principles are there implied in the context of Santa and the person of Prahlad. So to reside happily in Nadia, in the Dham, is to begin with, to be in peace. To be, again, Gyan Karma Adi Anabritam Anya Vilasita Sunya, all these that are the Tatastal actions of Uttam Bhakti. What Uttam Bhakti is free of, from. I mean, we need to know that. What it is directly and what it is not also. And there we will attain peace. In Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Teva Shanta, Mukti Mukti Siddhikami Sakalya Santa. So the devotee is in peace because he has no separate sense of being and sense of interest. And interestingly here, Bhaktivinoda Thakur defines, generally in Srimhadev is Bhakti Vigna Vignasana, the destroyer of the obstacles in Bhakti. But here, the Srimhadev speaks to Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his trance, like, by the strength of the mercy of my devotees, all obstacles will be destroyed. So that's a very interesting way of understanding in which sense the Srimhadev is the destroyer of obstacles. He will come to our lives in a personified way in the form of the sadhu, as we said the other day. One says Nrsimhadev is not different from Krishna, Krishna is not different from Sri Guru in one sense, so Sri Guru is not different from Nrsimhadev, Simha Guru. Will help us to destroy all these obstacles by the strength of their mercy. Mercy is powerful. Again, there's nothing more powerful, and we have to be ready to deal with such an energy, such a power. I mean, try to imagine I'm dealing with the most powerful thing that can exist. That will be in itself powerful. I mean, to be in contact with the most powerful thing is not just a play, a game, a joke. The Kripa Shakti of Bhagavan. That's like, as we say, the very personification of this idea of Sudarshana. Sudarshana means proper vision. Sudarshana. So the sadhus with their mercy. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in another part of the Naudi Bhavataranga, we attain adhikar in bhakti, we attain eligibility in devotion by the mercy of the sadhus. I mean, our adhikar is depending on their mercy. That's an important point. Our eligibility, eligibility, aptitude, no, how do you say in English? Oh, that's in Spanish. Whatever, eligibility, qualification, thank you. Depends on the mercy of the sadhu. We have no reason to become proud, oh, I'm so qualified, because whatever qualification you have in bhakti is because of mercy. And mercy by its very definition is not justice. So we do not deserve that. It's causeless. Causeless from our side. There's no cause in us to deserve that. There is a cause in the heart of the sadhu to be inclined to give him that, but it's causeless from our side, basically. So in this sense, okay, the mercy of the sadhu makes so many things, but we have, of course, our part to play. We are not automatons and just give me mercy, and of course, we have to receive the mercy. We have to be willing to do that. Again, the most powerful energy in creation coming to us. That's intense. That's not a joke. And in the context of dealing with such a purifying, powerful thing, sometimes those things that are not representing our ultimate ideal may come to the surface, and we have to know what to do with that. And so, as we said the other day, we should identify our anarthas, but we should not identify with our anarthas. So it's almost the same sentence, but with one extra word that can save your life and save you from going paranoid. You have to identify your anarthas, but you don't have to identify with your anarthas. That's a subtle line. Anarthas means unwanted, whatever. Not unwanted, but false sense of value, basically. False values that we still entertain. So we have to acknowledge them, locate them, but we are not those false values. Because if we over-identify with that, we get discouraged. If we do not identify them, we get discouraged. So, middle path. You have to identify them, but not to over-identify with them. I'm that. Try to imagine if you think, I'm lost, I'm envy, that's me. The project is over. But that dust is there. That speck of dust is there. I have to do something with that. I have to learn to integrate it properly. So, what to do? All this happening again. And the grace of the devotees also won't create it's not that the devotee come to our life and chat. We are free from that. But their company makes us aware of what we have to do. By contrast with the absence of those elements in the sadhu, that kind of creates that type of reflection. you may be full of something and you get close to someone who is full of that thing, that will kind of merge and nobody will notice anything. No? Everything is okay. But if suddenly you get in contact with someone who is not the exact opposite, but who is considerably free from that, or as much as that person is free from that, that will kind of create this reflection effect. If you are sincere and have ears to hear and realize, oh, you will look at him, her, you will look at you, and try to, okay, know what to do. As we say, the sadhu is our own potential appearing in front of us. So the saintly person is showing all that you can be, all that you can become, in a gentle way. Not like you should be like me or something like this. She may not even say a word, but invisibly all the things are happening. So we need to go in that direction. Once one devotee asked Srila Maharaj what to do with when I'm being constantly attacked and affected by all this stuff, like separate desire and anger and anxiety and fear. And he said, just run to what Raghunath Das Swami would call Krishna's police. Mm-hmm. The devotees, basically. Run to them and ask for SOS. How do you say? We were speaking today. SOS. Emergency case, do something here. But have the integrity to run when you need to do so. I mean, do not be fearful of that. Mm-hmm. That's the most secure place in the world, under the shade of the feet of the sadhus, of the Kripa Shakti of Bhagavan. So again, on one side, we need that ingress of the Swarup Shakti, of the Kripa Shakti in our lives for us to attain all success. But on another side, we have to do our part. We have to run to the sadhu. We have to beg for mercy. We have to ask for shelter. So the two things. We are speaking about Raga-nuga Bhakti. Raga-nuga Bhakti means to follow in the footsteps of certain personalities, but also doesn't mean just to imitate. Just like, okay, I do whatever they do, and that's Raga-nuga Bhakti. No, you have to have your own. Our path has to do with following another's experience, but you have to have your own experience while doing that. We follow the idea. It's not just like I do copy paste of whatever, Rupa Manjari or whoever, I copy paste and now I'm whoever I have to be. No, you have to be yourself in the context of putting yourself under the shelter of those personalities. That has to do with dealing, again, with whatever we have to deal yet here, our humanity, our emotionality, relativity, in the context of Raga Bhakti, in the context of our Nara Lila. Krishna has a Nara Lila, we somehow have our Nara Lila. We have to deal with our humanness. So Krishna's Nara Lila is the all in all for us, Raga Bhaktas. Krishna Rayati Kakila Sarabhutama Nara Lila. Nara Bapu Tanhara Sarupa. Gopa Vesha Venukara Navakisha Natavara Nara Lila Hai Anurup. Says Krishna Das Kaviraj. Nara Lila of Sri Krishna is the topmost Lila of all, the topmost form of the Absolute, which is his form Gopavesh, Benukar, Navakishor, Natava. So he's Gopavesh, dressed as a Gopa, Benukar, flute in hand, Gopavesh, Benukar, Navakishor, eternal adolescent, Natava. Gaurangi Priya knows what I'm speaking there. Natava, king of dancers. Nara Lila Hoy Anurup. Oh, this Nara Lila is like, Krishna finishes like, I don't know what to say, astonishing. Anurup, oh, this is too much. So this Nara Lila is supreme. And what we find there in Braj, in the land of the Nara Lila, all the humanity is perfectly integrated. Humanity is not like done away with in the name of transcendence for the sake of being transcendental. I mean, the topmost transcendental realm is the most human at the same time. Like Guru Maharaj will call that divine humanism. One thing is not like killing the other. You have the divine, fully human. Sometimes in Christianity, they will express in these terms in connection to Christ as well, right? So here we speak from our perspective of also this idea of divine humanism. This is the ultimate synthesis where humanity is fully justified as well as transcendence. And our Isadev, our favorite deity, if you will, chosen face of the Absolute, is really human. And Krishna in Vrindavan is so, how to say, I mean, we have to understand in the context of still being God, but of course, for us, this is a very unique theological proposition. And for us, Krishna is not so much God, but he's something else. I like to say that Krishna is God beyond God. Or I like to say that not so much Krishna is an aspect of God, but God is an aspect of Krishna. Which again, it makes the whole theological world like upside down. Like, what are we saying? As the different examples are given in Shastra. So God will be like the prime minister in the office and dealing with all the universal issues and controlling and justice and everything in order. But when he arrives home, the grandson is waiting, say, Grandpa, I want you to be a snake. Go to the floor. And the prime minister goes to the floor. That's with 2 words. And starts like to do like this. The grandson goes up and starts to like to whatever. Do it better. You're not doing nice. No? Imagine if someone in the government says the same thing to the prime minister. Go to the floor. You're not doing good. And jumps on it. With great fortune, you lose your job only. So in the same way, for us, Krishna is God at home. And when he's so much surrounded and embraced by affection that he forgets the office back him, the godhood. Still he's God. I mean, he didn't lose his post. But at that moment, he's totally absorbed there. So much, in that context, so much vulnerability is there, so much fragility. Interestingly, in the context of divine humanism, in the context of Lila, remember we spoke last Kartik on the Damodar Lila in this connection with the topic of divine imperfect, and we're worshipping these different levels of so-called imperfection, fragility in the divine. God sucking breast milk, which of course makes him particularly charming because he is God, and he still does that. God being jealous from Jasoda when she's attending the milk and neglecting him, or being like, how do you say, naughty, then breaking the pots. We know the whole Damodar Lila, sharing with the monkeys, then being frightened. Those are not the typical qualities of God. Naughty, frightened, dependent. And then it continues, as you know, he's frightened, he's tired. And that's a powerful symbol. I mean, God is being tired. It's like he has to no longer be God for that to happen, basically. But he's not become less. That's the point. He's tired, but of course, what's the rope made of? Affection. Subal has it right. Affection. So all these ideas. He's a thief. He's a liar. And in the context of the Damodar Lila, Jasoda and Nanda, they are not aware of the womanizer side of Krishna. His playboyness. He's called Lampatamani, the jewel like of the devotees. So that's on top of all that. But all this in the context of Nara Lila. And that makes him especially charming because of that, because of all the things happen. So these are some of the implications of dealing with divine humanism. I mean, we feel charmed about the prospect of Krishna Lila, Nara Lila. But the point is, we are humans also. We are not fully engaged in the Lila yet, but somehow we have our Nara Lila, to call it somehow in this way. It may not be the most exact term, but we have our own experience of humans, in the context of the Shrishti Lila. As sadhakas. Sadhakas means you are not the Bada Jiva, conditioned soul. You are not the Siddha, perfected being. You are in between, with 1 feet here, 1 feet there, and trying to have more feet on the other side, basically. So we have, as we say, Krishna Nara Lila, but our Nara Lila. Our Nara Lila means we could accept our humanity and learn to integrate that, acknowledging, as we mentioned today, all these different aspects of the unknown and so on. Because if we do not allow, in our own case, our own vulnerability, imperfection, fragility, very probably we won't be allowing all those things to happen in relation to Krishna in the Leela as well. We may be not developing a mentality that's wrong, that cannot happen, that shouldn't. But there is a land where all those things happen in the most perfect and charming way. So if we do not allow our own Nara Leela, do you follow my point? Probably we are not allowing Krishna's Leela in our life. I mean, Krishna's Leela is ongoing reality, eternal ongoing reality. But we are not allowing that Nara Leela to happen in our life. We are not allowing Braja Krishna to exist in our mind, if you will. To all of them to be who they are in our life. You follow my point? Mm-hmm. So we need to be proper humans, if you will, in that connection for Krishna Lila to happen. And well, we are speaking about vulnerability, so I have to speak about also, since Krishna and Vrindavan Braja Lila is known for its vulnerability, we can extend this idea even further and reach the shores of Gaur Lila. Let's go to Navadip. As my Guru Maharaj will say, the deeper you enter into Krishna Lila, you will emerge into Gaur Lila. Yatayata Gaura Padara Vindam Vindeta Bhaktim Krita Punya Rasi Tatat Sarpata Krishya Kashma Radha Padam Bhoja Put Sudhambo Rasi. The more you go deep into Krishna Lila, into Gaur Lila, you emerge in Krishna Lila. But Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya composed another verse. I don't learn it by heart. It says exactly the other thing. The more you go deep into Krishna Lila, you emerge into Gaur Lila. So Guru Maharaj will say, the lotus inside the lotus, and inside the lotus, and inside the lotus, and one is taken to other. So Gaur Lila and Mahaprabhu in particular, as we know, is Krishna in his most vulnerable moment, but at the same time, in his most volcanic moment. It's paradoxical, but we have spoken about that many times, about the empowerment that comes from vulnerability. Proper vulnerability creates proper empowerment. So that applies even to the Absolute. Krishna himself, in his most vulnerable moment, becomes the most volcanic face of the Absolute. Srila Sri Maharaj called him golden volcano of divine love, erupting in ecstasy, and it's lava, you say, consuming everything on its way. That was the poetic depiction. Try to imagine that. So we want to be consumed by that lava. So here Bhaktivinoda Thakur is invoking all these principles by referring to the realm of Mahaprabhu, Sri Navadvitam, and the worship of Radha and Krishna in Navadvitam, which we shortly addressed last class, and today also I would like to touch upon that. That's a really esoteric topic, and it may be termed the highest of the highest thing we could possibly even speak about. So, so it's something very high and complex. So I don't know. Should I continue?
Yes.
I don't know what may happen on the way, but I mean, some lava may come and we may get lost and found there. Okay. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is speaking about serving Radha and Krishna now. This is a very unique concept that we receive from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, especially. We are members of. So my Guru Maharaj will say we are humbled by being proud members of the Bhaktivinoda Parivar. So with Bhaktivinoda Thakur comes a lot of very unique contributions, and one of them is this special emphasis he made on Navadvip. Through his compositions, Navadvip Dhammahatma, Navadvip Bhavataranga, his emphasis on worship of Radha and Krishna Navadvip, which translates as worship of Gaur Gadadhar. Very unique idea, very, very complex and profound topic. But to begin with, let's go to the basics of this non-basic topic, which is Krishna is non-different from Mahaprabhu, which is in itself not so easy to understand. I mean, we may say it, but we have to walk the talk to really gain insight about how these two are one and different. That's not so easy. So we have to very intensely pray to someday be blessed with this realization, this insight. Krishna, Gaur, Krishna are non-different to begin with. And on the basis of that non-difference, there is some difference in mode, not in ontological reality. So similarly as Krishna and Gaur, Krishna non-difference, Vrindavan and Navadvip are non-different. Sometimes we may emphasize the difference, but it's important to emphasize the Abed side of the equation, non-difference. There is some difference in bhava again, but the foundation is Advait Gyan Tattva. So what is this Navadvip? How to understand Navadvip in connection to Vrindavan? Navadvip could be described. Once my Guru Maharaj said that, I like that a lot. He said Navadvip is like a stretching out of Vrindavan. Vrindavan stretching out, you say, like extending, allowing that thing that is not possible in Vrindavan. There is something that has not been possible for Krishna in Vrindavan. And that's what makes him, again, not in a point in time, but manifest, if you will, as Gaur and its corresponding abode. So Navadvip is the abode that facilitates Krishna, his project, I will say his ultimate, most upgraded project. Krishna Swayam Bhagavan. The Bhagavatam says this, you may know this famous line. Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam. Srila Prabhupada translated that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God. That's a very unique term if you try to break every word. Supreme Personality of Godhead. To speak about God, there's already something, but he has a personality and he has a supreme personality to his personality. He's a multifaceted jewel with thousands of personality and faces and avatars. And all these avatars are asankhya, says the Bhagavatam, uncountable, and each avatar is an emotional moment in the life of the Absolute, as my Guru Maharaj will say. But there's a supreme personality, a supreme face, a supreme expression. Swayam Bhagavan, Krishna. So he has received that reputation. So he's known around the world for being the ultimate, most face of the Absolute. But something happened there in Braj that he was not able to feel that title is justified. Because I'm Swayam Bhagavan, Krishna is the ultimate face of the Absolute in terms of rasa, in terms of static, ecstatic experience, above all the other faces of the Absolute for us Gaudias. But the point is that as Krishna in Braj, and there is when we enter esoteric waters, he was not able to fulfill, to honor that name, especially when he witnessed the degree of the love of his devotees, more specifically the gopis, even more specifically Sri Radha. As we already know in the Bhagavatam, there is this specific point where we could say the Gaur Lila is born. And after witnessing the love of the gopis in separation from him, after disappearing from the Rasa Lila, Rasa Mandal, Krishna is hidden, yeah, behind a tamal tree. There we have Tamal Krishna, camouflaging himself behind the tree because it's the same color, same hue, and witnessing this Viraha Kirtan of the gopis. And oh my God, what's going on here? I disappear from the Rasa Mandal with one purpose in mind, or more than one purpose, actually, many purposes at the same time. That's how Bhagavan operates. He does one thing and it has multifarious purposes to accomplish. But in the context of witnessing what was going on, he discovered, oh my God, now a new purpose is coming in my own heart for my own self, not connected in one sense to what I was thinking. And I'm contemplating the degree of their love that is reached the point that is totally unknown for me. And I start to doubt, in the words of my Guru Maharaj, I am the supreme taster, I am the supreme being, I am God, I am Rasaraj, I am Swayam Bhagavan, because what Sri Radha is experiencing is overflowing for me. I mean, it's overflowing in her and it's overflowing me. So I don't know what's that about. And she's experiencing all that in connection to me, but I don't know myself from that angle of view, of vision. I mean, she's seeing something in me that makes her the way she is. But what is she seeing in me? I don't know that. Who I am. Basically, that's what Krishna is asking himself at this point. He's having, in the words of our Guru Maharaj, an existential crisis. Who I am. That's another level of theology. Because in theology, generally, we ask, does God exist or not? But here we have a supra theology when God is asking himself, I am God or not? Does God exist or not? People say I am that person, but I have him very deep doubts at this point. So this is another level of theological dialogue. So all this, of course, gives rise, prepares the ground for the Gaur avatar, for the necessity of a Mahaprabhu, a Gaur Lila, for Krishna to try to make, again, something about that. Because he's Rasaraj, he's God. I mean, he has this existential crisis, but he remains being who he is. But being who he is has a lot of implications. That's a very interesting idea. Which are the implications of being God, or of being Krishna in particular, which is, as we say, God in so upgraded form that the terminology of God was left behind many blocks back on the highway, on Vaikuntha, something like this. So Mahaprabhu is needed for that. The project with Krishna himself is fully dedicated to knowing himself from the lens of love, of the topmost love, and who I am from that particular perspective. So a new, quote unquote, new manifestation appears. It doesn't appear, it exists eternally, but I'm trying to present that some chronology for us to, maybe it may help to think in linear terms for a moment. So Krishna says, I'm Swayam Bhagavan because I taste certain thing, but now I see that Sri Radha is tasting something I do not taste. So am I Swayam Bhagavan? So in order for him to retain his title, a new lila is required and a new abode is required. That will be the perfect stage to allow that to happen. That's Navadvip. So Navadvip is an abode that facilitates Krishna being Swayam, his being Swayam Bhagavan. Because Swayam Bhagavan is determined by rasa. The more rasa, the absolute relishes, the closest he reaches to Swayam Bhagavan idea. You follow? So Nadia is allowing Swayam Bhagavan Sri Krishna to become Swayam Bhagavan, Gaur Krishna. And Swayam Bhagavan with capital letters now. With Braja Krishna were capital letters in the S and the B, Swayam Bhagavan. But now we have Swayam Bhagavan Sri Krishna. So only in Navadvip, Swayam Bhagavan can taste what he could not taste in Vrindavan. My Guru Maharaj used some strong language. He said, in Braj, Krishna realized, oh, Braja Lila is a failure. I came to this world with one purpose in mind and everything was orchestrated, but at one point of the unfolding of the Lila, I found myself like in the need of another Lila, of another stage, of another me, if you will. An extension of all that. Again, it's not entirely different, it's just an extended version. Sometimes Gaur Lila is called Parishista Lila. Parishista means like the, how do you say in the book, epilogue? Like the epilogue of the book. The story is there, but there is something else to tell in this connection. So in this context, again, Krishna is coming as Mahaprabhu. So to taste Sri Radha Bhava. But as we know, I'm sorry if I'm getting too complex for those who are coming for the first time or something like that. What to do? That's a challenge of speaking with mixed audience, but no problem. That's my blessing also. But Radha is still there, although Mahaprabhu is, sometimes we hear Radha and Krishna combined. Strictly speaking, Radha Bhava Dhyuti Subhalitam Nomi Krishna Swarupam. He's Krishna. He's still Krishna, but in the shoes of Radha. But Radha is still there in Gaur Lila, somewhere else, if you will, in the form of Gadadhar. Sri Pandit Gadadhar Ki Jai. So Gadadhar Pandit is considered the most important figure in the whole Gaur Lila. The most crucial character for the whole Lila to be successful. I mean, the whole Gaur Lila has one purpose, which I have described now. And without Gadadhar, without Radha as Gadadhar, very generously giving her bab, his bab, to Gaur in very like installments, sustainable installments for him. I mean, Mahaprabhu wouldn't be successful in the whole purpose of inaugurating Gaur Lila, inaugurating, quote unquote. So try to understand this point. And I know this is complex and this may be way beyond our heads. It's way beyond my own head. I don't have a clue what I'm doing here speaking about these things, but it's the mercy of Sri Guru, and hopefully something will be grasped from this. But Krishna's Mahaprabhu is the absolute in its most needy moment. I mean, God has necessities. I know that there's this description of God as impossible, no necessity. It's okay. There's an aspect of that. God as Atmaram, self-satisfied. But here we are speaking of another, again, perspective. God is dissatisfied because of love, not dissatisfied because of lack of love. Because we are dissatisfied because of existential void. We are trying to fill the void with whatever seems to have the same form that fits with our piece of the puzzle here. Okay, it seems the same form. Not fitting. Next one. People, cars, possessions, position, money. Not fitting, not fitting. You try to fit. Now you break one part of the puzzle and you try to put it. Doesn't work like that. So we feel that dissatisfaction because of lack of love, of misplaced values. We can reach a point where we are fully satisfied. Again, shanti, 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 peace. I don't need anything. I'm okay with my own self. But there is a higher even level of that. We are interested in that, which is when you start to love, really, in every sense of the term. Love is, as my Guru Maharaj will say, gives full satisfaction, but also it can always increase, can always grow. So in that possibility of ongoing development, there is some dissatisfaction, but a healthy one. Once Srila Maharaj was giving a lecture, I think we shared the other day, and he gave one of those like astonishing darshans, and everyone was like flabbergasted and dumb. And one would say, Guru Maharaj, yeah, I'm totally satisfied. And he really meant that with all his naivete. And Srila Maharaj, with all his innocence, said, really satisfied? Is that possible? Like implying, we are to enter into the realm of where that is not possible. You can always become more satisfied and therefore more dissatisfied in a healthy way. Then some progression, divine love, union, separation, and all this type of dynamics we find there. So, but here we're speaking about God experiencing it. I mean, it's not only up to us, it's up to him ultimately. So he experiences, he has needs. I mean, that's for us very important to understand. God has needs, and we are to serve him in those needy moments. It's not that he doesn't need anything, because we spoke that about on the appearance day of the other Pandit some months ago. The more the God you worship is Atmaram, or self-satisfied, the less you feel, I have something to do here for him, because he's Atmaram. He doesn't need anything. Aptakam. He's self-satisfied. So what you can do for it? I mean, so generally what you will think is, I'm not self-satisfied. You are. So give me something to me. Generally, most people conceive God in those terms. He's okay. He doesn't need anything. I need so many things. So that's how I conceive my rasa with the Supreme, in terms of, you are self-satisfied. I am not. So feel me. No? Yeah. So you'll feel more. And there's no end. No? You follow. But because that creates the idea, he doesn't need anything. I mean, he's doing fine there. But the more you understand God has needs, but needs out of love, again, not needs out of whatever, misplaced values. There are no misplaced values in Bhagavan. the more he's needy, the more I have something to do. The more I identify with the neediness of God, the more I start to become myself in the realm of Lila. The more I get closer to all that I can be in Bhakti. Because all that I can be in Bhakti is a unit of service. I want to develop an identity of servant, but how will I develop a wholesome identity of servant if there's nothing to do? You follow? If I were surrounded by people who are all self-satisfied, how much can I be a servant from tip to toe? Even in Vaikuntha, you reach Vaikuntha, there is some dasya on some level, but mostly Santa, because Narayan is self-satisfied, and maybe you serve him not so much because he needs that, but because he's God. That's awareness in Vaikuntha. He's God, he is to be served. So I'm serving him because of this sense of duty. He's God, he's to be served. I love him because he's God. But he doesn't need anything. Like he's God, so I have to serve him. But as you get up the ladder above Vaikuntha and you reach what to speak Vrindavan, what to speak Navadvip, so much need. I mean, Krishna is so needy. That was the argument that Nanda Maharaj said to Uddhav. When Uddhav said, when he arrived to Braj and tried to give his sandesh, his message to the Brajavasis, trying to console them, Krishna gave that instruction, say to Nanda Maharaj, you are so fortunate that you have parental affection for the absolute. You feel yourself the father of he who is the father of everyone. He tried to insert this Aishwarya, also trying to save Nanda Maharaj's life and separation from Krishna. I mean, he was trying to do his best with the best intention. It was not a problem, but it was too much for Uddhav. I mean, the combination was, I mean, that was his first night in Vrindavan. His first minutes, he went down to the chariot, and after some minutes, he was like with Nanda and Jasoda for the whole night having darshan. Okay. So when he said to Nanda, "Oh, you are so fortunate. You feel you are the father of he who is the real father of everyone, God." Nanda Maharaj was like, he was crying and rolling on the ground. And when Uddhav said that, he like. So Uddhav thought, oh, maybe I got him. I got an entry point here. Ananda Maharaj said, Uddhav, you are so well known as being Krishna's minister, Shastra Beat, such a wise person, all this long list of qualities I've heard from you, but now I'm having pratyaksha, direct experience. I mean, you are not walking the talk. I mean, you're saying so much nonsense, basically. You say that my Lala is God. I mean, I know God. Again, Admaram, Aptakam, Bhagavan, Narayan, Vrindavan, Krishna is God. Krishna is God. So the Sri Vaishnavas had it right. They say Narayan is God. So we agree with that. Ultimately, we will feel like that in the Lord Vrindavan. Krishna is not God, Narayan is God. But we will pray to Narayan for the sake of Krishna. And he say, I know how God is. And I know, and I have pratyaksha of Krishna, I have direct experience of Krishna. Again, stealing, lying, fearful, naughty, whimsical. And he doesn't know his, again, playboy side. But that is already enough. So he's so needy, in other words. I mean, he has so much needs. What to speak if you then go to the gopis? I mean, they really will give you the full picture about how needy Krishna is from tip to toe. His heart is burning with desire. So we have to do something about that. We have to, with that forest fire there. So the point is, again, Krishna is so needy, and as Mahaprabhu, his upgraded version, he's even more needy. He has this so crucial project. I need to taste this. I need to understand myself. I'm in this existential. I need to solve this riddle. So he's so much in need, Krishna's Mahaprabhu, that implies Gadadhar is so much in need, because Gadadhar is Sri Radha serving Krishna in his moment of utmost necessity. And Krishna's necessity is Radha's necessity. She has no separate sense of necessity. There's no separate needy agenda for her. Whatever Krishna needs, automatically she's totally identified with that and becomes hers, her need, necessity. So Gadadhar is Sri Radha in her moment of greatest necessity. Why? Because Krishna is Mahaprabhu in his moment of greatest necessity. and Radha can only live to identify with Krishna's necessity and just live to try to satisfy that. He's so needy again. So she's so needy. So all this multiplied in the Gaur Lila. Try to grasp a little bit of this. So his necessity becomes her necessity, but amplified in this Gaur Lila. This is a contribution of Gadadhar. He's Radha in the role of Gadadhar, giving himself, herself, whatever. So Mahaprabhu can be successful, can taste the final, the ultimate victory in his Lila. So in this way, Gadadhar Pandit establishes this very important point here, which is, again, for us, the need to identify with a particular necessity and to identify with the mode of the Lila. Gaur Lila has a particular mode, particular bhav. We are not to approach Mahaprabhu in romantic love because he's not in that mode. We have to serve the mood in which Bhagavan is. So Sri Radha shows that as Gadadhar, adapts to the mood, to the necessity of the moment. That means adapt to the mood. So, and a whole identity of Seva comes as a result of that. Try to connect this point. I identified with the mode in which the object of my love is in, and a whole identity of service comes so I can serve that. So in one way, we are to develop that eventually. I mean, again, when we say spiritual body, Siddha Deha, Bhakti Swarup, blah, 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 what does it mean? It's not just magic. Not that I chant 16 rounds, follow 4 regulative principles without failing, and one day I'm there. I'm there where? First, I have to really develop all the things inside of me. So the point is, again, the more needy the absolute is, the more necessity of service there will be, and the bigger the chance for us to identify with that necessity and to develop a more and more condensed identity of service. So again, Raga-nuga Bhakti is very specific. It's not just like, again, magically I will reach Golok Vrindavan, Nityanavadip someday. I have to develop a sense of an identity of service. And that begins with identifying with the necessity of service. And that begins with understanding there is a necessity of service. Even us as sadhakas, we can feel that in the context of Sri Guru. Our Guru Maharaj will say that, quoting this famous verse from Rupa Goswami. Tundi tanda vinira timbitanute tundavali labdhaye karna krodha kadambini gathayate karnarbudhe vyaspriham Cheta Sangana Setu Prangana Sangini Vijayate Sarvendriyanam Kritim Jane Janita Kiyat Viramritai Krishne Tibarnam Dvayi. This may be the most important verse in connection to Sri Nam, holy name. There, Sri Rupa Goswami says, when I enter in touch with these 2 syllables, Krishna, I cannot say how much nectar is there. I cannot tell it. I cannot begin to conceive that. I can only say that I only hanker long for having thousands of ears, thousands of tongues, thousands of senses to make justice to all that current, that descending current that comes and collapses everything. So my Guru Maharaj will say, that's a definition of Sri Guru, of the sadhu. He's in that necessity. He's so needy. I mean, try to understand what Rupa Goswami said. He's in such a need. For the Guru, he has 2 ears, 1 tongue, but he will ask his disciples, give me your ears, give me your tongues, an extensions of my own, so I can somehow try to make honor to this current that is descending from me. So we as disciples are to identify, oh, Gurudev is so needy. That's not speaking less of him or her. That's actually presenting his her position in its ultimate glory, because that neediness comes as a result of that neediness. So in this way, some words we wanted to share also in connection to Sri Sri Gaur Gadadhar, which is really, again, going back to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Give me some few minutes with your permission today. He really established the worship. He worshipped Gaur Gadadhar in Godrum. They were their Ista Devata, their Radha Krishna worship in Navadvip. He himself composed many nice prayers for them, the famous Godrum Bhajan Upadesh, and where he describes this in the song, he even concludes glorifying the worship of Gaur Gadadhar, Shmara Gaura Gadadhar, Keli Kadam, and so on, trying Bhava Gaura Gadadhar, Paksha Charam, and so on. Srinu Gaura Gadadhar, Charukatam, Bhaja, Godruma Khanana Kunjavidum. So trying to invite the reader, that's the conclusion of what does it mean to reside in Godrum for me. Is it try to remember Gaur Gadadhar and their lila, and try to become a servant of Gaur Gadadhar. Again, try to develop an identity of service out of identification with the need that happens in between them. Try to listen to the katha about them, and this way just worship the moon of Godrum Chandra, Mahaprabhu ki jai. So, some ideas. I told you it was not an introductory topic, so I gave you the caution. But these are something of all the implications in this verse. And interestingly, Nrsimhadev has a role to play in all this, as very nicely Bhaktivinoda Thakur put it. A role to play for us in our particular stage, and as we will see and conclude tomorrow, as we advance in our progress, in our practice, that particular role of Nrsimhadev will go to the background, but it will makes full circle and again reappear again in the ultimate reality of Lila from another perspective. But we will continue tomorrow speaking about that. Bhagavan ki jai, Sachinananda Moy Thakur Bhaktinam ki jai. So I don't know if we have some minutes for questions. Or do we have some minutes? Okay. I don't know if there are any questions. Also, to those who are, to those who are online, invited if there are any questions as well. Have one question?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah.
More just reflecting because I'm still digesting that. I mean, this is amazing to focus on that Krishna or God has needs. You were making the point about what devotees often call Krishna as the order supplier. You're saying how you're just thinking you have unlimited, just give me more and more. And at what point we turn around and say, what can I give back? This is kind of general things devotees talk about. But I mean, this is really just beautiful how you highlighted Lord Chaitanya, really the expansion of Krishna's even being more needy for love. And I really love this point about love, about how you were saying that the lack, like God doesn't have a lack of some kind of, like how we have this material lacks, we try to fit with material dead objects. But that Krishna is constantly wanting to expand his love, his experience of love. So he's more and more. He's having that expanded need. So it's just
he has a necessity. Yeah, thank you for sure. He has a necessity not out of emptiness, but out of fullness. For example, you have the Rasa Lila. On one side Krishna, on the other side the gopis, and you may think, oh, okay, they're getting together because they are empty and they need the other to fill the void, and vice versa. I say, no, actually, they are full. The two of them are full, and they are getting together to celebrate their fullness. And that's the type of necessity. When you are full, you feel the need to dance, sing, celebrate. It's a need, but out of fullness. That's the whole idea of lila. Even though externally it may seem disconcerting or even tragic at some moment, all of that has to do with connected with the need out of fullness. You're full, actually. How that is, it takes form out externally that may be overwhelming. We need to understand that, because sometimes it may seem, oh, Sri Radha is dying, that's tragic, that shouldn't be happening. But the background of that is, it has to do with some type of fullness that creates some necessity, and that plays out in the dynamics of the lila, union, separation, but beyond the external form. That's Anandamai, full of Ananda, says Krishnadas Kaviraj. Bahya Visa Jalahai, Vitare Anandamai. Krishna Prema Adbhuta Charit. Madan Gopal likes that verse, especially two words, especially how our Guru Maharaj pronounces them. Externally, divine love seems like poison, but internally it's Ananda, full of Ananda. So,
I could ask a question. It may be a broad topic, but because you talked about Srimati Radharani and taking on the mood of the Gadadhar and serving like that. So, what is one or two of the primary differences maybe between how she's serving Krishna versus how Gadadhar is maybe supporting Mahaprabhu's mood? Like, I know that's a vast topic, but like just to highlight.
Yeah, of course, that again, to understand how Gadadhar is serving Mahaprabhu is important to understand in which mood Mahaprabhu is in. That's why I made the whole introduction of what took to the Gaur Lila, why Krishna appears as Mahaprabhu, which is the purpose behind, which is the necessity behind, because when we understand that, immediately we understand what's Gadadhar's role there, because it means he's fully identified with making that happen, basically. Of course, how that plays itself out in practice, it has to do again with the mood of the Lila, the particular dynamic in which Mahaprabhu is. For example, I don't know, Gadadhar on a daily basis gives Bhagavat Katha. We have the Srimad Bhagavatam lectures every day. Prabhupada established that on the basis of the eternal dynamics in Nityanavadip. Gadadhar teaching Bhagavatam, Radha teaching Bhagavatam to Krishna. You want to be in that class. I mean, I don't know if you want to be. That will be intense again. You may sit not in the first human being. So it's Sri Radha teaching Krishna Bhagavatam. And what's Bhagavatam? As my Guru Maharaj will say, Bhagavatam is not about Krishna. Bhagavatam is about love for Krishna. So Sri Radha is Krishna's guru in that connection. Amishisha Guru Nath Radhikar Premunmat, he says in Chaitanya Charitamrita. She's my guru, and I'm going to her university, to her school, Prem, and I'm a dancing puppet. And her Prem makes me dance so many incredible dances. That's how Krishna's own Abhiman, self-consideration. Where you are interviewing Krishna, who are you? I'm dancing puppet in the love school of Sri Radha. He will so, I mean, if someone asks you who is Krishna, you say that, he will be so happy. If you say he's the absolute supreme control, okay. But if you say that, he's like, okay. Oh. So that's one of the roles in those type of lectures. Sri Radha is teaching Krishna's Gaur how to culture that love. And eventually, as we know, when Mahaprabhu is progressing in this exercise of tasting Radha Bhav that is growing exponentially in the unfolding of the Leela, on earthly Leela I'm referring here, at one point Gadadhar Pandit can no longer be there close to Mahaprabhu, and that's when Mahaprabhu retires to the Gambhira. Gadadhar Pandit remains in Tota Gopinath, but sending the two coach facilitators, Ramananda Roy, Sarup Damodar, Lalita Vishaka, to teach close, because Gadadhar has to take some distance, because in the words of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, Gadadhar Pandit is emptying himself out more and more. But of course, properly understood, that emptiness represents the topmost fullness. Sometimes he's poetically described as an empty bag. Srila Sridhar Maharaj will say, and it seems like empty bag, that doesn't sound like great glorification. But it speaks about the disposition, the disposition of sacrificing himself to Mahaprabhu is successful. So in the distance, he's monitoring, you say. And of course, in the inner world, Gadadhar Pandit is witnessing whatever is going on in the Gambhira, but he can no longer be there, because Mahaprabhu is becoming more and more Radha, Radha, Radha. And that's why sometimes Gadadhar is described as Rukmini or some lessened, you say, diminished forms of Radha, because, I mean, still Radha, but sharing in a diminished way, but the diminishing is, I mean, if you understand the full context of what she's doing to be diminished, the only thing that happens is that Gadadhar starts to shine more and more brightly. Because the more, well, Guru Maharaj finished his sacred preface book like this: when Mahaprabhu reaches the peak and he shares Radha Bhav fully, if you will, if you can say fully, that happens in the last verse of the Sikshastakam. Sikshastakam is the last chapter of Gaur Lila, if you will, the last chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita, ending with Sikshastakam, the very last verse, Shlisha Bapada Ratam Pinashtamam, etc. Krishna Das Kaviraj said, this verse was spoken by Sri Radha. So what does it mean? Mahaprabhu made it. The whole purpose for his Leela was successful, and everyone will be like, Jai, Jai Gaurchanda, he did it. But if properly understood, the role of Gadadhar, who has at this moment totally disappeared behind the curtain, and you don't hear anything about Gadadhar Pandit, almost anything along the whole Chaitanya Charitamrita, but at this point, nothing, totally disappeared, but allowing all that to happen. So if properly understood, if you have a taste for indirect speech and all this stuff, you will understand, oh my gosh, if properly understood, the glory of Gadadhar outshines Mahaprabhu even in this moment of topmost relishing of Radha Bhav, because Gadadhar is allowing that to happen. But it's totally hiding into the background. That's the natural humility of Sri Radha also. She doesn't want to be seen like, I'm the great devotee, whatever. No? But allowing all that to happen. So that's a really, so much integrity is there, so much nobility is there. I mean, without Gadadhar Pandit, we have no Gaur Lila, strictly speaking. Gaur Lila will be another failure. And I don't think Krishna was ready to a second failure after the one in Braj. So Sri Radha's Gadadhar made that to happen. So that's why Bhaktivinoda Thakura and all our acharyas paid that special respect in that direction. Something else, some other question or commentary, contribution?
I have a question.
Yes. Your name?
I really appreciate the concept you presented about identifying or trying to identify a need of Krishna's in order to identify our own identity and service. And I'm wondering how we can maintain and cultivate humility in that process, to not get prideful of, oh, I'm meeting a need of Krishna's, or he needs me for this.
Mm-hmm.
How to maintain humility and grace in that process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, the ideas that I was shared at the same time are really high. No, it's not something that we can just press a button and I'm already there attending all the needs of the absolute and no, I mean, we have to begin somewhere, and to have the concept already helps, and to accept, as Amritanam said, like, okay, yeah, where God has needs, but out of fullness and out of love, so legal needs, proper needs. But as you mentioned, how in the context of like processing that, not to feel like he needs me, but he needs me, strictly speaking. I mean, that's a fact. Of course, I need also, it's two-side streets. So I will say that's the main thing. I mean, that's love. Love is like, exactly, reciprocal. So it's, I need you, you need me. It's not that you only need me. That will be like dysfunctional, psychology or emotional. Like, all of you need me. Like, oh my gosh. No. The Swami has ate the cake of Pratista fully. Didn't leave any single part for anyone. So I think, of course, again, my point is we cannot just imitate and just, okay, now from now on, only God only needs me. It's not vice versa. No. I mean, we are sadhakas, have to realize how needy we are also. But again, in a proper context, not because we can say I'm so needy, but identifying ourselves with not our real needs. because the fact that we say I need something doesn't mean that's your real necessity. Follow? I mean, we feel we need so many things, but how many of those things are really necessary? So that's the process of sadhaka. I mean, I have all these needs, and I'm being educated about anukulya sankalpa pratikulya varjanam, accepting what's real, favorable to my project of loving relationship with God. That trying to understand that's my real need. Of course, you cannot force that. You may understand, I don't know, still in my stage, I have this need that I know that in eternity I shouldn't have. But it's not that by saying that you have transcended everything. Still, you may need to deal with that in some way. And it's okay. I mean, it's not like a crime. It's not like from now on, only identify with what Krishna wants. Because there is place for your will, ultimately, also. As my Guru Maharaj will say, in Golok Vrindavan, one devotee likes bananas and the other devotee likes mangoes. And it's not that whatever you like, Krishna, that's my favorite fruit. No, they will say, I like this, and I like this, and I like that. No? So, but again, not in the context of selfish enjoyment. That's a whole identity of service that came up, but we are not there. So, yeah, I will say that point. I mean, you in theory, you know, God has needs. I would like to prepare myself to get closer to that reality. I find it charming. I like the prospect. It's nice. I'm not there. You cannot just like imitate that, but you know it's like that. It works like that. That's a very charming prospect. But okay, that's where I want to go, where I want to be. Again, as we always say. But where I am now, the goal to attain my present situation, so you can establish the path to thread from one point to the other, as we gave the example of the GPS the other day. You have to put, I want to go here, and I am here. And then it will say, you have to do this. It will take this. So we have to also be really honest, because sometimes in the name of, I only want to identify with Krishna's needs, we may be evasive also. Because we may have so many needs that we need to acknowledge, or so many fears, as we spoke today, that we need to acknowledge before trying to exclusively identify with Krishna's needs. So sometimes we have to satisfy our own needs, even though it may seem selfish, in the context of someday fully identifying with Krishna's needs. If we bear in mind what's the goal we want to attain, even we will satisfy our relative needs or whatever maybe want to put, but having that goal in mind. So, okay, I need to be a balanced human being at this present moment. I don't want to be dysfunctional. So I need this to be in place. I need, I don't know, house, a family. I need this experience. I need whatever, sex life. Taboo word? No, I shouldn't mention it. Silence. I mean, I'm not saying that me as a sannyasi. Just in case. I'm giving an example, which maybe most may identify. And you need to figure out how I can satisfy those needs in such a way that all that eventually converges into that exclusive, absolute obsessionate, healthily obsessionate absorption in what Krishna needs. And it may sound disconnected, like, but what has to do your sex life with? But if you have that in mind and you are properly doing the things with sincerity and proper education, you will be getting closer to that. It may take some time, but no rush.
Yeah, it feels like what you were saying in the beginning about integration.
Exactly. So yeah, we need to integrate. Integrate means love is described as moving in a crooked way. It's a love moves like a snake, Rupa Goswami says. Many things can be said in that regard, of course. But Srila Sri Maharaj once said something very nice. He said, of course, you can say love is like a snake because it's unpredictable. It's not like a straight line. That you know, okay, it's going here and I will find it in this line here. Oh, it's going there and there. You have to be ready for those dynamics. You know? Krishna's flute call. You don't know where he will call. Next flute call will be here. You go there, flute is calling there. is calling there. But also you can say love moves in a crooked way, in a sense that Srila Srinath said, it means that love on its progress, it's embracing everything that is on its path. It's not leaving anything out of the path. It's integrating everything. A moment like a snake. Because if you go like this, so many things are left behind here and there. But if you go like this, you don't want to leave anything out of your project, no? Because that project is so so deep, so broad that it has the capacity of including everything in it, of integrating everything. Easier said than done, and sometimes in practice we may have some, okay, how to do this, but okay, that's a struggle of healthy struggle of the sadhakas. That's glorious, even though it may seem embarrassing. It's in the context of reaching that goal, so it's glorious. Yeah, for sure. I mean, rest assured that you will have so many opportunities to be humble. All of us, not only you. Krishna will very. I mean, we know it. I don't need to explain detail. So the embarrassing chapters are coming one after the other. So you realize who you are, where you are, but where you want to be also. I mean, if you are sincere in those embarrassing moments, not like I forgot totally the goal, but actually, hopefully, that fire becomes more intensified. Jai Krishna Chaitanya. Yeah. Krishna Chaitanya, Krishna consciousness has appeared. Shri Krishna Chaitanya. So, yeah. Okay, something else?
Well,
Yes.
I just had this thought when you were saying about how in the spiritual realm there's, they like different fruits and one person likes bananas. So I just had this thought that this idea of not having individualism that can come kind of from spiritual groups, maybe. Like, is this actually a more Mayavadi distinction, like not having individualism?
Well, I don't want to call you Mayavadi, but I mean, the fullest phase of being individual will flourish during the lila, no? So, and I know that in some stages of our practice, we may land more to the negative side of this not, this not, this is not, this is not, this is relative Maya, neti. But Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta say, be careful with neti, because too much neti will throw you into Brahma Jyoti. Exactly. And you will be remaining there. This not, this not, this not. No. But what about yes? No? So let's say, Om means a big yes. That what I'm looking for exists, and there is something positive. So, so yeah, our individuality will be really fully validated in the lila. I mean, that's where we will be individual from tip to toe, and doesn't mean, again, I have no will, I have no agency, I have no wish. I mean, there you will have more desires than what you can ever conceive. I mean, we think now we have desires. We may say, I'm full of desires. You don't have a clue how much you will be full of desires over there, but they will be totally expressed with another center, basically. So all the things you say now, oh, I suffer so much. You don't have a clue. Well, you will suffer there, but with another center. So be careful of not projecting your subjective experience of suffering there. I mean, you will suffer there more than here, but the subjective quality of the suffering will be totally different because Krishna will be in the center. I mean, I'm not saying Krishna is not in the center here, but the point is, with Krishna in the center, even suffering is sweet. I know this is maybe difficult for us to understand, and still we may have this notion that I want to stop suffering, and all these things may create, as we spoke the other days, and these moksha, some scars, and I want to get freed from the negative. But at the end of the day, we know that's not our path. I mean, if you want that, better you join the Gyan Mara. There are so many Advaitins over there, over here. Imagine even North Carolina. But but our path is really the opposite, if you will, full of desire, full of everything. But it seems like what we are experiencing nowadays, aprakrita. It seems prakrita, but it's aprakrita. It's supra mundane, super transcendental. So yeah, our real individuality will. I mean, as sadhakas, we are starting to have a glimpse of who we are, who we can be, and all that will keep like confirming and flourishing more and more as we get closer to. We will have a whole criterion and desires, but interestingly, all that will be totally aligned and in harmony with the movement of the lila, because everything works for Krishna's pleasure there. I mean, there's no second option, if you will, in that connection. Do I please Krishna or not? Everything is there. Every atom is in that. But in the context of that, everyone has will and chooses. It's not that, okay, so the only option I have is to please Krishna. I have no more will. No, in the context of pleasing Krishna, you have so many options, and so your will can. I mean, try to analyze our situation as conditioned souls. We express our will without Krishna, if you will. And there is so much nuanced and ways that we can do so many things and this and that without Krishna. So the individuality is nuanced, and you do this, that, if you will, conditioned sense of identity. So what to speak? When that's properly expressed with the centeredness, so much more possibilities will be there. I mean, there's no end. So yeah, in one way, that's this idea of negation of individuality in the ultimate reality is a form of impersonalism, because and there are so many varieties of. We were speaking the other day of impersonalism. I mean, that's the greatest. I mean, we have to really take the time to understand why our acharyas spoke so strongly against that. Not only because of what we think, officially merging into Brahman. That's but there are so many implications of that even play out as in our life as sadhakas. I was sharing the other day. I shared, I don't know, I shared a quote yesterday or the day before yesterday from. But it was in Spanish, but I think Facebook translated the things immediately into the local language, right? So maybe some of you read it. From Purna Chandra Swami. He's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, but he passed away some years back. Sorry?
He was a very wonderful personality.
Okay. Krishna Priya says that. That's a fact. So he wrote one book that I really like a lot. I recommend if you would like to read it. It's called Unspoken Obstacles in the Path of Bhakti. Tempting title. Unspoken Obstacles in the Path of Bhakti. So in the context of one section, he speaks about impersonalism institutions and how you can be a Mayavad by remaining in an institution like one more face, just one face in the crowd, without criterion, without will, without volition, without opinion, and just like a mediocre and conformist, you say? Mm-hmm. That's a form of sayuja. Now you are merging into the crowd. Now you have all these people, the masses, and you just merge your face there. And whatever the masses go, say, yeah, no, yeah, and go here. That's a form of impersonalism. That's a variety of that. It's not necessarily that you have to say, Ham Brahmasmi, and I want to merge into the officially. I mean, you maybe officially say, I want to go to Goloka Vrindavan, but still so many shades of Mayavad are there, Sunjavad are there, atheism, nihilism. I mean, it's not so easy to get rid of all those, the forms those things take. But we are on the path, so we remain faithful that everything will be in place. But we have to be ready to find those things also. Not to be so sure that I'm already free from that. I already know what's this, what's that. I already know what's Mayavad, and eventually you realize, oh no, oh my God, I'm that. In this particular form I never thought of. I'm discovering this variety of impersonalism like lingering in my own mind. So, again, not to over-identify with that, but to acknowledge it and do something about it.
Because we have to know, like you're saying, what to put in the GPS. We have to be careful to not just blindly go, and maybe because it's easier, right? Moksha, the path of moksha is easier. Krishna can be like, sure, you want moksha. That's easier than.
Yeah, in one sense, one can say klesha dikata rastasham vyakta shakta chittasam. It's more difficult and susukam kartumavyam, but I get your point. Yeah. And I agree that when we play in the GPS will tell us, as you would say, GPS also can be in Guru Parampara system. And they will tell us not only from here to here, this is the distance and this is the time, but this is what you will find on the way. This a hole here, a tiger there, and all this Mayavad stuff varieties in us are part of those things. So our guardians will be ready to point them. I mean, we have to be ready to allow those points to happen in ourselves, because maybe your guru is not that will go and tell you, I know you have this variety, this shade of impersonalism here. Maybe that won't happen, but maybe he's speaking about that. And if you are sincerely hearing, he's saying that to you by way of identification. So you cannot expect, my guru has to do all the work. It has to come and point, you have this and this. And no, you have to be sincere. And if you hear sincerely, all the answers will come and fit in the perfect place. That's the half of the equation that the Sisya has to do, the disciple. Do not give the guru the 100% burden of, in the name of, you are so great and I'm so fallen, because that can happen. And so you fall and guru, he will say, no, you do something also. If you want to serve me, do your part also. Yeah.
A little bit worried sometimes. People will be afraid when this subject comes up about, there's so much more suffering, in prema. That's when you realize that you were just dreaming suffering. You were suffering in your mind, but the real suffering was soul, love. And so
everyone became serious when I say that, just in case.
Yeah.
I felt like maybe to soften the image, because it's,
if
we don't understand what you're saying, it could be like there's an image of like eternity is going to be worse suffering than anything you can imagine, because that's what love is. And I think that it's important, like what you're saying about where's the greatest need. And that's the prakatli, that there's like a bridge, there's our world of samsara where we're miserably suffering our own egocentrism. And then there's nitya lila, where it's just pure premananda. There's not much suffering, separation there actually. If Krishna's passing in the forest and goes behind a tree, that moment Radhika will feel some intense separation. Her sati will catch her waist so she doesn't faint just from that. But then the next moment, Krishna comes out the other side of the tree and it's okay. It's not like going to Mathura. It's not like burning Yugaitam Nimeshana for 80 years, where every second is a yuga. So this Prakat Lila is like, in this world, they who are full of love and happiness, they come to taste the perfection of suffering in Prakat Lila, because this is the world of that. Us who are in this world of suffering, the perfection of our suffering is empathy with them. You have needs, so how can I feel? You can't serve someone if you don't have empathy. Can I bring you a cool towel for your head, but you don't feel with them? Compassion means I suffer passion with you. So the perfection of God's taste of love, of suffering, is this Prakat Lila. And the perfection of our suffering, we been working with suffering for millions of lifetimes, but we don't really know how to suffer artfully. We don't know how to get the PhD, bear the fruit of what is suffering. It's love. We don't know how to crack that egg and come out. And this is like the bridge. They come to suffer perfect, loving suffering. And if we, in our sadhana in this life, focus more on that. I want to be there so that I can perfect suffering by serving your suffering. Then it's done. It's not that the nitya that will be so much suffering. It's like we need one lifetime to be born in the manifest pastime to know what is really pain. I've seen how the suffers are boiling the Yamuna in separation. See how Radhika is burning the chandan on her limbs, and we have to live that with them. And then bond, it's like when wax melts and you come together and you bond heart with the Nityasiddhas by suffering with them, solidarity. Then it's done. This intense suffering, it's like, I think we're suffering here because we haven't perfected the art. So I was just thinking when you were saying that, about what you said about where is God's need. And the Nitya Lila it's something else, but it's really to focus on taking birth in the Prakat Lila, perfect our own suffering, and be really useful, because anything you do for someone who's in pain, like Thakura Bhaktivinoda says, Vrindavan is for shallow thinkers. I want to do bhajan on the battlefield of Kurukshetra.
Yeah, but also you get to the Nitya Lila, but the Prakat Lila continues playing out continuously, and those will go again to the Prakat Lila. Interestingly, I appreciate your point for sure. Yeah, I agree. But also, I agree that it's not that you get to the Nitya Lila and there's no more Prakat Lila. That's my point. But you will go to the Prakat Lila, having gone through the first Prakat Lila, if you will. And at the end, I will say that we can speak so much about suffering, and because it's not the suffering you think, but the more we have to get closer to the reality of love. That will like really help to get the real insight of. I mean, if you don't love, you won't understand someone who is loving. If you don't go mad, you won't understand someone who is crazy, basically. but Prakat Lila is a crucial bridge, if you will. That's why Vishwanath Chakravarti says, even if you achieve Prem in this lifetime, you have to go there first before entering into the Aprakat and to imbibe those samskar from mainly in separation on earth from the Nitya Siddha. So,
as you were joking about this, if I chant 16 rounds and keep the 4 Vedic principles, I'll go back to Godhead like that. But never we talk about this missing piece of like, you have to go to the Prakat Lila, you have to take birth in Krishna pastime. That's the most. So what we're doing with our life is preparing to be able to digest that kind of suffering, that separation, to be able to be useful there also, to keep our head and not just be like completely uneducated. You step into a PhD love situation and you're just like still so full of egocentrism because you never were always afraid of your suffering in this life. Always I would just want sattva-guru and like comfort and convenience. We'll never cross the bridge at the Prakat Lila because we're not useful there. It would be annoying. Like, you're just like, your presence is like salt in a wound. Can you just shut up? Jai Krishna.
It will take time. So no rush again. Srila Simara will say the process in itself is joyful. So we are not like in a hurry up to get somewhere, but we want to really get wherever we have to get and ready to pay the price required for really arriving at this moment and really be of service there and not something else, something less than that. Thank you. Something else before finishing? I think we are almost in time, but I think we can finish here. Tomorrow we will continue with here also, tomorrow. So we'll continue with the last verse tomorrow. That will be also very special closing to this 5 series here, 5 verses given by Sri Thakur Bhaktivinoda. So hopefully see you tomorrow. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Srimad Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Sri Thakur Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Srila Radha Pandit ki jai, Srimha Bhagavan ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Pramananda Pancha Kalpatarurya Chakra Tanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.